Good morning. We are getting to the end of the year here, and in the spirit of expanding, as companies of different sizes and shapes are trying to grow, they're probably looking at budget for next year, trying to wind down this year, and they're thinking about growth. And if they've had a good year or a bad year, they're still thinking about growth. So I thought it would be good to do a 2-part series where we talk about where and when to invest in marketing, since marketing is a big piece of growth for a lot of companies. So I think, kind of doing a flyover on this topic is could be edifying for companies. So let's start with part 1, and that is knowing when to invest in marketing. So, again, it's let me start with stage, right? That's the first thing. It depends on what stage you're in with your company. If you are just starting out, it's going to look a little different than if you are kind of at the end of stage 1, starting at stage 2. Stage 1 being small company, stage 2 being mid-level.
Because marketing's really, from the onset, whether you may not be directly spending money, but it's still a mindset. You're still putting time into it. You just may not have money allocated to it. Now, as you're growing, you're going to say, okay, we're going to actually put money to marketing.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I would say, think about the stage that you're in and the resources you have, both you and your mind and, your mindset, and the team that you have around you, whether they're a marketer or not, with a small company, or if you're a bigger company and you're the CEO and you have a marketing director, VP with a marketing team. Either way, you have to start out with this idea of, okay, who are we as a company? What's the mission we're on? And how do we describe that messaging, right? How do we translate that to our target audience? And then doing the work to stay in front of customers, always asking questions, always being observant about what they're doing, getting feedback. That's going to be the key to growth in marketing and sales really forever. So why not start that now, with customer A? So it depends on the stage you're at in terms of when you're going to invest, and invest starting again with, like, you don't have to have money or resources to invest. It really needs to be more of a mindset and building the culture internally, so that's translated externally. The next thing is going to be the function. So the function of marketing is going to be asking yourself this question of, what is it going to do for me? All right. If I take these actions, what kind of result am I going to be looking to achieve? And it's a good,
and if there's actual, immediate results that you can ascertain from it, because a lot of marketing, you're not going to have an immediate.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a good, it's a healthy thing to do. And it kind of goes back to mindset too, to know that not all of your marketing efforts, whatever they may be, are going to have a complete quantifiable ROI.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But being aware that these certain efforts will, and you should measure them accordingly, and these certain efforts won't really, and it's going to be harder to measure quantitatively. Quantitatively. You're going to probably measure those more qualitatively, and that's going to come in the form of feedback from both partners, customers, employees. And you'll see rewards from both sides, but just knowing which ones should be measured certain ways is going to help you a lot.
Yeah.
And you don't want to put a lot of money into things that can't be measured quantitatively and expect them to be measured that way. And then the last thing is type. So what type of marketing? There's, endless types of marketing. It's the type of marketing is going to be dictated based on your customer. So, or your prospective buyer. You have to meet them where they are. Okay. So where are their watering holes? Are they at conferences? Are they on Instagram? How do they live their lives, both personally and professionally, to the degree that you can know that?
Yeah.
Right. So the other thing I'd like to say too is there's a difference between B2C, business to consumer, and B2B, business to business marketing, in that you are typically just you're supporting sales with marketing on the B2B side. And on the B2C side, it's going to be a lot more direct to your consumer. It's going to be awareness. That's going to be a lot of awareness. Marketing becomes the main lever you pull on B2C, and it becomes a secondary level of support or lever of support on the B2B side until you get far enough down the road, mid-sized company, that it can become its own prioritized lever that can generate its own revenue. You know, if you're a B2B company right now, just take a second and think, how did you get where you are? How did you get all your sales? It's from selling. It's from
correct. Or you hit a price point you're able to provide at a better price point, or your service was faster.
Well, yes, in from a holistic standpoint, but in terms of actually selling a customer, bringing them on, it wasn't through a Facebook ad probably. No. It was probably from a conference you went to, you shook a lot of hands and you followed up with them because you have this widget you're trying to sell through channel partners as a manufacturer, or you sell a service like drop off or whatever.
An industry you were already in, and you already had people, that you already had that degree of comfort that they would listen to your conversation,
That's right.
receive the product. So you may have already filled out all of that. Now you need to move on and find
That's right.
new customers in the B2B world.
Right. And I mean, in one way or another, you have metaphorically knocked on their door and showed them what you can do, and they've bought or they didn't buy. Yeah. So that's sales. Marketing is going to support that at some point so that your salespeople can be more efficient and have higher conversions. You can have quicker to close. It can support the sales metrics. So that's would be your first goal, I think, as a B2B company. But then eventually marketing will become its own revenue generator that will sit alongside sales, and they'll be aligned.
Yeah.
But B2C is going to be completely different from day one. I won't name any names, but we both know of several companies, we'll say, that have launched. We both know them, and they're not doing anything to bring awareness to their business, which is concerning because it's a B2C oriented business. And in order to grow, you need awareness. You need customers to just know that you exist so they can make a decision. They can't make a decision if they don't know you exist.
And what I've always found is difficult in that world of B2C is that's not a one-time thing. It has to be hit the consumer over the head many times until you are part of their thought process of whether it's when they go to, buy that product, whether they go to eat, that they are running through that you're in the top of the top 3-4 picks.
And that essentially comes down to two stages of the funnel: awareness heavily if you're new. And then once you have some traction, market fit, all of those things, it's nurture. And you have to be able to do both of those consistently at a high level to distinguish yourself and your uniquenesses in the market over time.
Now, it's a little off the wall, but have you been a part of an industry where you've gone in and now you need to be the awareness, now you spend money on the marketing, you realize, and you may not know what the margins are on the product the company sells for, but then you come to realize, wait a second, your margins are not good enough to cover marketing expenses or cover that.
Oh, yeah.
You just bow out and say, you need to find a new product, or like you're never going to grow further than you are because you don't have enough margins in this product in order to tell more people about it.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that's really how I went from helping people with marketing to helping people with their business, because I realized that a lot of businesses, marketing is the main lever, but they don't see what I see from the outside. Yeah. I can come in and it's not hard to figure out how the margins on a product or service. So, you do a little bit of math and you look around the room and you see, well, they've got, 50 people here at however much per year, plus benefits and all the overhead that goes with it. And then you look at their volume and there's your, pro forma.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not really that hard to figure out. And once I had done it enough, I can look at it, and that's a hard conversation to have because honestly, owners and CEOs have a vision in mind where they want to go. And I may not have all the pieces to the puzzle because you have other things like acquisitions. You have things that are hidden and are not brought to the conversation when we're talking about marketing initially.
Yeah, they don't know you and they don't need to.
Yeah, and that's fine.
You. Yeah.
So it's hard for me to give a complete directional advice unless I know have all the other pieces. But with small to mid-sized companies, they're not acquiring any companies. They're not doing all these more complicated things. yet. They're really just trying to acquire more customers. And so it's a relatively simple conversation. And once you've seen it enough, you see who does it a certain way. So, you can see how someone's running a company and you can say, okay, I figured out that you are good at buying businesses, but you're not good at running them, as an example. Or, maybe you're really good at sales and that's why you, as they say, sales covers all sins.
Well, I mean, I think there's some businesses that, they're always going to be between 3 and 5 million annual sales, and you're not going to get that additional income from going to 5 to 10 million. Like you're not going to double your income. You're actually that.
You're talking about for the owner?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Like that product fit where they're at, unless they do a complete overhaul.
Yeah.
They need to not grow. They just need to stay in that particular lane. And
a lot of small businesses are built around the lifestyle of the owner. And once they kind of feel like, okay, well, I'm in my, late 40s or mid 50s, whatever, and I see retirement on the horizon and I kind of don't want to work as much. There's a lot of things that dictate growth out, that are personal. Mm-hmm. I'd say by far more than just the, typical charts that you look at and say, well, this is where you should be.
But as you grow, if your margins don't get better, then you're going to have law of diminishing returns.
Yes.
And I think so many businesses are set up that way where, they grow and they kind of grow themselves into bankruptcy because they didn't realize, this is really only great at 3 to 5 million. We need to be comfortable. So now we maybe need to just start a new product or a new company on something else.
Exactly.
If we have extra time.
Not necessarily new company, but new product. That's the way that I think maybe I wouldn't say complacent, but people who are still have a lot of drive and they want the best for their employees and their company and they want things to thrive and they want to eventually maybe sell it one day. Mm-hmm. They're all good intentions and they're there working, but they don't want to double down on acquiring a new company and growing 10X or whatever. They don't want to do all that. The best thing for them is to talk to their key leaders and say, what are you seeing in the market from your perspective? What are they seeing in the market from talking to their people? And develop a new service or product around that, if there is one to be developed, and launch it, because it puts new life into the culture. People are like, oh wow, we're excited about this new thing. The owner gets more excited too, and you potentially will create something that has more margin and you make more money, but you haven't really changed the structure of your organization. Right. So that's really the best way to grow. I know this is kind of off topic, but that's the best way to grow when you're at that stage, because I mean, honestly, that's the plan that I have, is like, I want to do, the least amount of labor for the most amount of value mutually between the client or my customers and my company. But I don't want to have all the overhead.
And what I think of in banking that has been drilled in my head and constant, it's always risk. Mm-hmm. Risk reward, and how do you minimize risk?
Yeah.
And so I know we've already got inherent risk in certain products. So if we already have that level of risk, how can we be either more efficient or make more returns off of that already existing risk? You're already comfortable for that existing risk.
Exactly
so
right.
Now if I can, if there's an add-on, if there's a development, your own software that you were paying for, then now you got your cost from 5 cents down to 2 cents. Great.
Yeah.
Same amount of risk. You didn't add any additional risk, but now you've increased your margin because you've grown. So that's where, and a lot of my products already have this line of risk. We already have this volume. Okay. How do I increase the revenue off of the exact same level of risk I have? Or how do I make that existing risk a little less risky?
That's it. Revenue and margin. Mm-hmm. And you're kind of not talking about verticalizing your stack of things that you're offering, but in a sense you could verticalize. So you could own, everything from, let's just say from a retail standpoint, the point of sale all the way through
the manufacturing
to
that. If you're,
instead of just the service side and having other vendors do other things, it just keeps things interesting for the owner in terms of how you grow. Yes, I think in a way you're taking on a little bit more risk because you are doubling down on the vertical, you're doubling down on that bet on the market. That's, if that whole thing flattens,
Correct.
well, you're going to experience that pain more exponentially up the line. But if you know your market and you've served that market.
Well, I think we'd be fools to think no matter what market you're in, it can always be taken away. I don't care what it is.
For sure. Yeah.
It can always be taken away.
Yeah. Yeah. And that has to be a healthy, just conscious
Yeah.
mindset.
Some things a lot less than others.
And you prepare as much as you can for them. A lot of them, usually those type of things are external factors that you can't, like regulation and those kind of things.
Whatever.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I would say there's always a 1% chance of anything.
Yeah. But no, I mean, that's the way to be thinking about it. I think if you are not wanting to sell your company to an enterprise level, you're wanting to stick in it for another 10 years or so. And I think if you've grown past the small stage, expanding to the nature of what we're doing here, right? Like expanding inside your company with more products, getting more utilization from your key employees. If you're paying 10 employees over 100,000 a year and they are subject matter experts, well, then why not leverage that expertise in other ways? It's not to say you're going to ask them to do 2 jobs for the price of 1, but they may want to step up to the plate and say, yeah, I want to be part of that new project. So, I'll be part of the meetings or whatever. So, I know we kind of got off track a little bit, but I think all of that is valuable because it's like growth comes from so many different points. It's not just marketing. It's not just sales. Those are sort of the end pointing into the spear to generate the revenue.
Right.
But when you actually look at healthy growth, it's all these other things too. So we'll wrap this first part up on knowing when to invest. We talked about stage, function, type.
Did we give a concrete example of when to invest? I always go back to whenever I listen to a podcast. There's a lot of theoretical things, but what's some concrete things on when to invest?
Well, let's look.
Listeners.
Stage. We talked. I think we talked pretty concrete. I'll let listeners be the judge. I think from B2C standpoint, if you're at the early stage, just day one, you need to have a really good brand, and that is brand is not logo and design, but it is at that stage. You really have to say, if I'm going to be putting this out on the internet everywhere, it needs to be cohesive. It needs to have thought put into it. And it needs to have continuity of colors and, how people navigate your website. It's just, that's where we are today. So, so for a concrete example, I'd say if you're early stage, you need to really think heavily about what you look like and how people interact with you, because what you're going to do first.
Yeah, that's always going to be a cost.
Make people aware of what you're doing.
You're going to have to build in the cost of marketing into your product.
Right.
Know that from the beginning.
For sure. If you're selling a product online or if you're serving burgers at a restaurant, whatever you're starting up, people are going to come to your website or to your burger shack and they're going to make a first assumption. And they're going to say, do I fit here? And do I want to keep coming back here? What is exciting about this? Is it that, Groupon sale that got me from Instagram to this cart?
Or now is it that, the marketing that said we're not using seed oils?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. You're touching something in that target audience, and the messaging has to come through. So that's there. And then the mid-size, again, B2C is going to be still heavy awareness and, but more nurture, because as you get bigger, you're going to want to retain, you're going to want to own your audience. You're going to want to own a lot of lists. You don't want to be paying to get in front of people over and over and over and over. So nurturing is going to be a key example of that is email newsletter. So being able to take all your whole message, put it in a newsletter, and translate that on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, whatever your audience can stomach, and push value so that you're always in front of them, like you had said earlier, is paramount in this day still, because people live in their inbox. From a social standpoint, it's going to be on stories.
And that is another topic that I want to get on at some point, is how much you continually feed information to your customers or your potential, because I may like a product, but I sure get turned off when I'm just getting bombarded.
For sure. Yeah. You mean like those follow you ads and those kind of things? where
Or
they're
just-
retargeting you?
Yeah, I mean, they're just constant. I can think of one where it's a media subscription that is, it's like 6 times a day they're telling you what's new on their site, and it's like, okay, I got to work. Like, yeah, I like your content, but
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way.
a daily or a weekly update of the summation is about it, because
Yeah.
then I get
that.
fatigue of how many emails I end up throwing in the junk.
Oh yeah, you get turned off and you unsubscribe and
Yeah. Or when they mix sales within the actual guts.
Well, that just shows you that they are not being thoughtful about their audience. What they're ultimately trying to do is sell you something. And so they're turning marketing into sales. Marketing is not sales.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you try to sell through marketing, and there are ways to do it that are soft and subtle and support that sale. I mean, with B2C, you have to sell. Like you have to take someone from awareness to conversion, right? But if the person's not ready, it's all about timing. If they're not ready, then they're not going to buy.
Yeah.
So you're going to turn them off, right? So you have to be able to see those cues and those touch points and translate that into next actions. The marketing team's not doing that.
Correct.
And not to put it all on the marketing team either, because the higher up might be pushing them for more numbers.
Oh yeah, there's some higher
and then
end
they're like,
products
okay, well,
that I
we'll
thought
send
of,
more emails
that I liked and that had interest in. But then and I said, no, I'm not ready. It was on my time. Look, it's identified. I like your product, but I'm not ready to follow through with it. It's not as big as a priority at this time. When it is, I will call them back. And then when they just bombard you from that point on, you never want to deal with that company again.
Yeah. I think this is a good point in our conversation to kick over to part 2 of where, because I think we're pretty much going to keep just talking about what we're talking about. So in the next video is where to invest in marketing.